I want to share with you a personal story. When more or less I was 15 or 16 years old, I was going through a difficult time in my life. Well, very difficult, some things. And I imagine we all have these moments, especially when we are teenagers. And I remember very clearly when I talked to my parents and I asked them for help. I told them I have been suffering in silence, alone, supported by my faith in God, but it was time for me to ask for help. And I will get back later to this story. Today we read in the Torah about our third forefather. We already read about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we are now in the midst of the story of Jacob. It's a little bit complicated to explain that there are 3 forefathers. But we are in the third forefather. And before we move on, I want to ask you if I know the answer. But if you know the answer, I'm going to ask you because I think you know the answer. What happened if there is a missing letter in the Torah? You know the answer, so keep that in mind. If there's a missing letter in the Torah, you know the answer, so keep that in mind. So today's parasha is something particular that neither Ava and KJ mentioned in their teaching, and I will get there later. But first, let me ask you one more question. Is there any person named Leah here today? Yes, there's Leah. Okay, anybody else is named Leah? Okay, so what I'm about to say only refers to the Leah in the Torah and has nothing to do with Leah here or Leah, your friend from college, or other Leahs you may know. The way I see the Torah tale, Leah is the saddest person in the Torah. Leah is sad and suffers from the first time she's mentioned in the story. It is written, now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. So far, so good. Leah had weak or tender eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. So friends, the first place a person can feel and sense someone else's sadness is in the eyes. She is immediately described as a suffering person. Tender eyes probably implies that she cried a lot. The second indication is that she's used by her father to cheat Jacob. She was the oldest, and we know Laban cheated Jacob. And not only that, if we read the text very carefully, we discover that she married Jacob, and then after a week, just 1 week, 7 days, Jacob marries her own sister. Not just a lady, her sister. In some point, we could say that Hashem tried to compensate her suffering, her ordeal, and she gave her 4 sons. Not bad. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. And we still read that the father of her children did not love her. And then we read the following story. During the wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some special plants, and he brought these special fruits to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please, give me some of your son's fruits. But she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's fruits too? What an answer, yes? Very well, said Rachel. He can be with you tonight in return for your son's fruits. So when Jacob came in from the field that evening, Leah went out to meet him. You must be with me tonight, she said. I have hired you with my son's fruits. She hires her own husband. What a sad situation. So God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a 5th son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. That's the name of the 5th son. And here is where I want to come back to our Torah scroll. We know what makes a Torah scroll pasul, that we cannot use it. If a letter is missing or incomplete, we cannot read from the Torah. Yes? Correct. But today, we read in the Torah the only word in the whole Torah that has a letter that is not pronounced. When Leah names her fifth son Issachar, we find the letter sin or shin, the only letter we do not pronounce. So I invite you to look in the Humashim on page 177. Page 177, and if you look on verse 18, and Leah said, God has given my reward for having given my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar. So if you see the Hebrew, Batomer Leah, Natan Elohim Sechari, Asher Natati Shivchati Leishi, Batikra et Shmo Issachar. Can you see the middle letter? The first sin in the name, we pronounce it. But the second is mute. In fact, it's not a shin nor a sin. Can you see there's no dot for those who read Hebrew? It's a mute letter. In the word Issachar, in the name of her son, we can still see her silent suffering. Leah is crying silently. She's telling us, there are things I am going to express with my silence. There are things that cannot be expressed with words, but with silence. She suffered like nobody else in the Torah, and she expressed that through a mute letter. A missing letter in the Torah invalidates the whole Torah. A silent letter in a name expresses the sadness of a mother. People sometimes say more through their silence than they say with their own words. It is our obligation as a people with high values to look other people into their eyes, because eyes express sadness. It is our obligation as a congregation with high values to hear the silent voices, to pay attention to the silent letters. It is our responsibility as people with high values to not remain passive to the suffering of others. It is our obligation and responsibility as people with high values to understand that redemption cannot be achieved when there are people who have sad eyes. It is our obligation as a congregation with high values to help those who suffer. The silent letter, the silent shin or sin, may mean the lack of simcha, the lack of happiness in Leah's life. She suffered in silence. Many others suffer in silence. Some have the ability to ask for help. I was one of those lucky people who asked his parents that I need a counselor. I was young. I need some extra help. Some others suffer in silence. But we all have the possibility to help, to be helpers. May the only silent letter in the Torah inspire us to be aware of the presence of those who suffer silently. May the only silent letter, the only letter we do not pronounce in the Torah, inspire us to help others, expressing and sharing their pain so they do not suffer in silence anymore, and we all can be a source of help. Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach.